So let's talk about how a single, quote unquote, wrong note completely changed the course of music history. Yeah, you heard that right. A note so weird, so out of place, that it even baffled one of Mozart's own students. You've been there, right? A teacher hands you a problem that seems impossible. You're staring at it, you know all the rules, but the solution just isn't clicking. Well, believe it or not, that's precisely the spot one of Mozart's pupils found himself in. And check this out. This wasn't some beginner. We're talking about Thomas Atwood. This guy had already spent 2 years studying in Italy, the heart of music at the time. But when Mozart gave him what should have been a super simple exercise, just harmonizing a basic melody, Atwood hit a total wall. He got completely stuck on this one little musical phrase. So, what was going on? So here's the thing. The problem wasn't Atwood. Not at all. The problem was the music. It was actively breaking the rules. The entire language of music was in the middle of a massive shift, and poor Atwood was just caught in the crossfire. Okay, so this huge musical shakeup actually had a name. It was called the Galant style. And it wasn't just a tweak here or there, it was a total rethinking of what music was supposed to sound like, and maybe even more importantly, how it was supposed to make you feel. Let's set the scene. It's around 1730, and frankly, people were getting a little burned out on the old style. The music of the late Baroque. I mean, think of Bach. It's genius, absolutely, but it's incredibly dense and complex. The public was craving something new. They were hungry for something clearer, something more direct. And you can really see the difference right here. On one side, you've got the Baroque style. It's like this massive, ornate cathedral of sound, with all these different melodies happening at once. That's called polyphony. It's impressive, for sure, but it's heavy. And then, on the other side, you have the new Galant style. It's simple, it's elegant. You get one clear melody, and the rest is just beautiful accompaniment. It's light, it's breezy, and you can just follow it. Now, at the very heart of this new sound was this musical fingerprint, a totally new way to end a sentence, musically speaking. A guy named Marperg was the first to really nail it down, which is why we call it Marperg's Galant cadence. And, you guessed it, it's that 1-2-1 melodic pattern from Atwood's homework. This was the so-called wrong note. So what was the big deal? What rule was it actually breaking? Well, the old school rulebook said that this first note, the 1, always had to go down, no exceptions. But in this new Galant style, the note does something rebellious. It gracefully, defiantly, goes up to 2 before coming back down. It sounds like such a tiny thing, right? But in the world of music theory, this was a seismic shift. It was huge. I mean, you gotta try and put yourself in their shoes, or their powdered wigs, I guess. You're hearing this for the first time, and it's breaking a rule you've heard followed your entire life. For some people, it probably sounded jarring, totally wrong. But for most, wow, it was like a window opened. It was a breath of fresh air. It sounded modern, sophisticated, and just elegant. Right. So a sound this new doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It had to be built, brick by brick. And that's exactly what a whole generation of composers was doing. They were literally crafting a new language for music. And you can really trace how it all unfolded. It starts bubbling up in Italian operas back in the 1730s. Fast forward to the 1750s, and you've got pioneers like C.P.E. Bach and Gluck being called the founders of this new classical style. Then the 60s hit, and Joseph Haydn just grabs the ball and runs with it, basically inventing the modern symphony. And then, in the 1780s, Mozart lands in Vienna, and he's ready to take everything they've built and elevate it to a whole other level. And this new language wasn't just about making things simpler, it was about dialing up the emotion. You had these two incredible movements. First, the Infantsommer still, or the sensitive style, which was all about expressing these really subtle, personal feelings. And then, on the complete other end of the spectrum, you had Sturm und Drang, which literally means storm and stress. Think dramatic, intense, turbulent. Music was suddenly getting way more personal, way more dynamic than it had ever been. All right, so the stage is set. The new language is being written. And that's when the two giants who would come to define the entire era walk onto the scene, Haydn and Mozart. First up, you have Joseph Haydn. You can think of him as the master architect of the classical style. He saw all these cool new Galant ideas floating around, and he was the one who gathered them all up and gave them a solid structure. He created the blueprints for things like the symphony and the string quartet. Essentially, he built the house that classical music would live in. And then came Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. So if Haydn built the house, Mozart was the genius interior designer who moved in and made it breathtaking. He absorbed everything Haydn had created, took that perfect structure, and just flooded it with his own incredible gift for melody and drama. You see, Haydn was the king of pure instrumental music, but Mozart took that framework and applied it to the high-stakes world of opera and the show-stopping brilliance of the concerto. Okay, so let's circle all the way back. Remember that little musical puzzle that completely stumped Thomas Attwood? How does that fit with these two masters of the universe, Haydn and Mozart? Well, here's the kicker. That wrong note, the one from Attwood's lesson, the rule-breaking gallant cadence that was so confusing, Mozart used it, constantly. It wasn't some weird, obscure thing he was testing a student on, it was one of his go-to moves. And they didn't just sprinkle it in anywhere. No, this cadence became a super powerful tool. Think of it like a musical exclamation point. Both Mozart and Haydn would save it for the really important moments, like when they were confirming a big shift to a new key, or when they needed a really solid, satisfying ending to a major section. This little wrong note went from being a controversial new idea to being one of the absolute signature sounds of the classical style. So whatever happened to poor Thomas Attwood, the guy who started this whole story? Well, don't worry about him. He definitely figured it out. In fact, Mozart himself later said this about him, calling him one of his best students, someone who really got his style. The student who was so baffled by the new language eventually became totally fluent. And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? The student's puzzle became the master's signature. It's just incredible to think that such a small, rule-breaking idea, one tiny melodic turn, was powerful enough to redefine an entire era of music. It really makes you think, though, what are the wrong notes of today? What are the sounds happening in music right now that break all the rules, that maybe sound a little weird to us, but that in 100 years people will look back on as the beginning of something totally new? What's the next wrong note that's going to change everything?